a good day. We'll stay standing for a moment because I'm just up here to really set things up and then get out of the way. We have a guest speaker today. His name is Pastor Jonathan Lambert. Some of you may know him. If you were at Team Conference or ARC Conference, he is the pastor along with his amazing wife, Pastor Natasha. And what's cool about you guys is you actually lead as a family, so his kids are involved in ministry and they're a part of it too. And that's how we model this church and this house as well. They're pastors of an amazing church in Calgary called Experience Church. And they're also, Pastor Jonathan is the executive director of ARC Canada. ARC Canada, we talk about it every now and then, is our church planting family. And I say this often. It's crazy because every time we have a guest speaker, I realize how many things needed to happen for us to be here. And we invite these people who we built relationship with over the last, 4, 6, 8 years. And you just stand in awe because you're like, wow, I would not be here. We would not be here in this room if it were not for men and women like Pastor Jonathan and Pastor Natasha. So they've gone before us. They pioneered. They were the first ARC church plant in Canada and have just led the way for more and more churches to be planted, to be started. That's what planting means, by the way. If you're like, what's a church plant? A church launch, a church start, a beginning. And they lead an amazing church. And what's so cool is Pastor Jonathan and Pastor Natasha, they are mine and Roberta's pastors as well. So as we pastor this church, we are not without pastors. As we shepherd, we have shepherds. And Pastor Jonathan and Pastor Natasha are two of the amazing people that speak into us, that pour into us, that love us, encourage us, tell us where we're getting it wrong, tell us where we made mistakes, and help us correct it for the glory of God. He's a phenomenal preacher, one of the best, if not the best, I think, in the entire country. He travels all over preaching the gospel, and he took the time out of his very, very busy and full and rich life to be here with us today. And so I want to encourage us to lean in, get excited for what God's going to do. Get your notebooks out, follow along in Scripture. We're going to cheer him on and shout him down and lean into this moment. But as I welcome to the stage, Pastor Jonathan Lambert, would you make some noise? Come on, clap, cheer, and celebrate as we welcome Pastor Jonathan.
Hey, thanks everybody. Man, Pastor Mark, you made it sound like such a sacrifice. Who doesn't want to come to Winnipeg in the summertime? I'd take August in Winnipeg over January anytime. Don't ask me to come in January. Hey, I noticed that you're still standing, and that's cool. So while you're standing, I do just want to say that your pastors are brilliant leaders. And there's more, but that's good. You can clap right there. Earlier, Pastor Mark was like, hey, where do you want your table? And I was like, oh, just wherever you put it. He's like, I don't use a table. And I was like, it's like weird flex, man. That's fine. But it has been an honor to be able to watch and track along with the Rose Church planting journey, launching in the middle of like one of the craziest times we've ever been in, but launching with faith and determination and resolve. And that the character of the church is the character of the leadership. And you guys have navigated things. And I was thinking about the seasons you've kind of been through, and I thought, man, the test proves the value. You know at IKEA, they used to have this display at IKEA all the time where they had one of those like wooden chairs with the white cushion and the thing pushing down on it. And it's like tested this many times. And it's not that that's comfortable, but it proves that it's valuable. And I just thought as we were watching, man, Rose Church is valuable. What's happening and what's ahead is valuable. And you know it's valuable because you've had to navigate some things to be here. Your pastors have navigated some things to be here. I just want you to honor and appreciate the leadership of the house. And I know it's a team effort, but if there were no leader, there'd be no team. We love you. Thanks for having me. Okay, sit down. Sit down. Enough standing. It's crazy. You got very comfortable chairs. And you need to use them. Mark, Chad, is anybody watching the Olympics? Does anybody care? It's weird, hey? Half the people I know are boycotting, half of them are watching. I'm like, none of the athletes chose the opening ceremony. Who cares? Paul says, forever people have been rejecting God and making fools of themselves. It's nothing new. Just cheer them on. We beat that really cocky American in the 4x100. Man, that felt good. Canada who? Shut up. Okay. All right. Anyways, has nothing to do with anything. Mark chapter 6. Verse 41, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up into heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. Let's pause and take a prayer break. Jesus, we thank you for what you've already started speaking to our hearts through the worship this morning. We ask that the scripture would come alive and pierce us deep. We trust you to do a good work in your name. Amen. Okay, so in this story, the feeding of the 5,000, some of you may have heard it before. Some of you are like, I know this one. I wish it was another Sabbath Sunday because I've heard this story before. But what I want to do is we started with Mark's, a little bit of reading from Mark. But I want to cut it up like a feature film. I want to give you different angles on the story of the feeding of the 5,000. So Mark is like the storyboard. Mark hits with the straight goods. The book of Mark is very concise. It's to the point. Mark doesn't even waste any time on baby Jesus. He doesn't care. He just wanted to get to the good stuff. That's the book of Mark. But then Matthew and Luke and John, they kind of get into some of the nuance and the color and so the details help the story come to life. I choose this story today because although it might be familiar to some of you, what this story represents, the feeding of the 5,000, it's a miracle that comes out of a situation where Jesus and the disciples are looking at a need that they don't have the resources to meet. And anytime you're looking at a need that you don't have the natural resources to meet, you are actually standing in miracle territory. And so I chose this one because I believe today there are people in the room and you're standing in a moment where you have needs that you can't meet on your own. That should not be a discouragement to you. It should be an encouragement. Man, I'm in miracle territory. I chose that today because Rose Church, you are facing needs you can't meet. You can't, right now, you could not fit the whole city in here. You can't serve the whole city. You're looking at 100 backpacks, but I know in the hearts of your pastors is 500 and 1,000. So there are needs that you can't meet on your own, but when you are faced with needs you can't meet, you're in miracle territory. At our church, we're believing for some big things right now. The need in front of us is greater than the natural resource we have in our hands, but that's miracle territory. So from a few different camera angles, Matthew says this in Matthew 14:13. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, crowds followed him on foot from the towns. So Matthew tells us that before Jesus could feed the 5,000, which by the way is not just 5,000, they counted men, which represented households. So you're probably somewhere between 15 and 20,000. We're a little bit charismatic, so we'll say 20 because it makes the story that much better. Before Jesus could feed the 20,000, he needed some alone time. I'm convinced that Jesus is an omnivert. So he's not an extrovert, he's not an introvert, he's kind of somewhere in the middle. He's got a little bit of extrovert in him, he's got a little bit of omnivert in him. Now some of you are extroverts, and the extroverts are the people who show up early on a Sunday to talk in the lobby. You're weird. You freak the rest of us out. Most people come into a gathering like this with a little bit of social anxiety, thinking, I hope someone says, I want to be noticed, but I don't really want to be talked to. Like, just give me some space. But there are both in the room. Maybe there's some omnis, but there's some extras, there's some interests. I probably lean more introverted than extroverted. Like, you can tell who you are by what charges you up. And if you're charged by being in the middle of the crowd talking to everybody, you're probably an extrovert and you need help. But if you That's okay. God made you like that. You can only just you need a pretty small number of extroverts per crowd or things get weird. But if you're recharged by alone time, then you're more introverted. I'm recharged by alone time. I come into Sundays, I gotta come in with a full social battery. It is for the 11 and a half years that our church has been going, I never do anything on Saturday night, never. I watch hockey, and then I hang out by myself until Sunday morning. Well, I mean, my wife's there, but we don't go out. We don't make plans. We don't do anything social. I dip out of weddings right after the reception meal because I don't do anything on Saturday night because I gotta charge up my battery so I can handle the onslaught of extroverts on Sunday morning. And then what happens is, so we got at our broadcast location, we got 3 services. By the end of the third service, but actually during the third service, the battery is so low, we never broadcast service number 3 because things get said that Natasha, my wife, says are inappropriate. So we don't broadcast that one. By the end of service number 3, when I go out into the lobby to shake babies and kiss hands, or you get it, whatever. When I go out into the lobby to connect, well, that's what happens after the third service. Your kid is so loud. No. Natasha's with me the whole time just to make sure I don't get into any arguments because the social battery's a little bit low. I love the interaction, but there comes a moment when I just want to be home. My favorite place to be is home. I like to be home. I don't like to go out. Guys we're 11 years in, no guys ever reach out to me anymore and say, hey, Pastor, you want to go out? You want to book a tea time? Like, what? I'm a dad. I can't golf and father. That doesn't even make sense. No, I don't want to go out with you. I just like being home. I recharge. I like being around my wife and my kids. They're my favorite people, and everybody else I'm just sort of indifferent to. And so, but then you would understand this, there are even moments at home when I'm like, God, I need a break from these people. And so every now and then, when I get home, before I have to deal with my family or embrace my family, I'll lock myself in the bathroom. And you probably do it too. It's the room of choice because it has a lock on it. And you can't lock them out of the house, so you just lock them out of the bathroom. And I'm not having a bath. I'm watching the same Sports Center highlights I watched 6 times the night before, but it just fuels my tank a little bit. But because I know the minute I open the door to the bathroom, somebody's gonna be there, Dad, guess what I built in Minecraft? And I'll be like, I don't care. Dad, guess what happened in Monopoly Go? Dad, can I sing you the song I wrote? No, it's not good. Dad, can I? And it's all this stuff. And so before I can respond appropriately, because what I want to say is I care, that's beautiful. What a hook. Like, that's what I want. I have to recharge. But when they were little, I would be sitting there, and you've probably seen this happen in your own, but like their fingers, someone's fingers would come under the door, and I see the fingers moving, and there's this tension, because I'm like, God, you've blessed me with these children. Look at those cute fingers, but I kind of want to snap all of them. And I think this is the tension Jesus is feeling in this moment, okay? Because things have been busy, and the disciples roll up, and Mark chapter 6, verse 30 says the apostles gathered around him and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. He sent them out in groups of 2, and now they come back, and it's like, Peter's fingers are under the door. Hey, Jesus, guess what happened? Guess what happened? And they just want to tell him all the stories. And what they don't know is that Jesus is navigating some of his own stuff in the moment. What they don't know is that Jesus is navigating the grief and pain of John, his cousin, having just been beheaded. So he's navigating the weight of loss. What they don't know is that in this moment, Jesus is navigating the fact that crowds are calling for him to step into a position of authority, lead a rebellion, and become king. So he's navigating his own grief journey. He's navigating the expectations of others. And the disciples are just like, hey, Jesus, hey, Jesus, hey, Jesus. So they go somewhere to get some rest. They went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place, but many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. So they arrive, and there's this welcoming committee there to greet them. Instead of being frustrated, annoyed, and kind of thrown off by the crowd, it says that Jesus had compassion on them. Compassion. He had compassion. Now, compassion is not just concern. Compassion is not just sympathy. Compassion is not just empathy. Compassion is not a post on social media. Compassion is not a text that says, hey, thoughts and prayers. Compassion can be represented by those things, but compassion is action. To be compassionate requires action, not just intention. Compassion requires action. By definition, compassion is doing something to relieve the pain of another. So when it says that Jesus had compassion on the 5,000 men and their families, he's looking at them and he intends to take action to relieve the pain and suffering of the people in front of them. And he had compassion on all of them. Not just a few, not just the ones who sat close, not just a particular demographic. Jesus looked out and had compassion on them. He understood, hey, there are people in this crowd in pain because everybody carries some weight and everybody carries some suffering and everybody carries some issues. And the posture of Jesus is, I know what they're going through and I can do something about it. It's amazing to me that Jesus can know everything about everyone and still look at them with compassion. Everything about everyone. And if he can look at 20,000 people from all different walks of life and feel compassion towards them, then he can look at Rose Church gathered in this room today. He can know every mistake, still have compassion. Knows every motive, still has compassion. Knows every thought and intention of your heart and my heart, yet still has compassion and takes action on our behalf. He knows the whole record of my history and still has compassion. He knows it all, and his posture is still, hey, I see that you're carrying weight. I know you've been through some stuff, and I am moved to work on your behalf. Now, even more than how he felt about that crowd and how he feels about this crowd, we have to remember that Jesus looks at every single person in the city with the same compassion. Every single person in the neighborhood of Transcona and the city of Winnipeg, Jesus looks at with this same compassion because he doesn't just have compassion on Christians. He has compassion on every person, no matter where they've been, what they've done, what their story is, who they are. No matter how many times they've rejected him, his posture is still the same. Where there's pain, I can help. Now, what gets me is not just that Jesus had compassion, but why Jesus had compassion. Jesus didn't have compassion on the group because it was a big crowd. He didn't have compassion on the group because they'd been hanging out all day and were hungry. He didn't have compassion on them because of how far they'd traveled or because of the physical needs that were in the crowd that day. It wasn't their hunger. It says he had compassion on them. Why? Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus was moved because the group had no leader. Jesus is moved to compassion towards 20,000 people because they are sheep without a shepherd, wandering, vulnerable, lost, no leader, no shepherd. That is the state that stirs up the compassionate heart of Christ. When he looks at the world and looks at our cities and looks at our lives and says, man, they don't have a leader. I need to do something. There was a leadership gap that day. And I think there's a leadership gap in this room. There's a leadership gap here. So I don't need to talk about you. You might think, well, who are you to accuse? Listen, I know this. I don't like to be led. Neither do you. Like, how dare he? Listen, we all love to be cheer-led. We don't really love to be led. Everybody wants a cheerleader. Everybody wants pom-poms and backflips, and you're amazing. You're incredible. Really great idea. Fantastic relationship you're in right now. Give me a J. J, you got your J. You got your J. Give me an O. Oh, you get the idea. My name's too long. But we love that. We want affirmation and celebration. We want all of it. And we chase encouragement at the expense of leadership. In fact, there are a lot of people who will walk away from healthy leadership because they're starved for encouragement. And I'm not saying it's bad to be encouraged, but do not chase empty words at the expense of leadership. We need to be led. Jesus is looking at the crowd and saying, here's the crisis that motivates me to action. It's the leadership gap. There's a world without leadership. They're like sheep without a shepherd. I don't know what you think when you think shepherd. I think harps. I think grass. I think wool, sheep. I think a little staff maybe. I get this picture. Psalm 23 says a lot about being a shepherd. Very famous passage. It starts out David saying, the psalmist, writing, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Now, we like the 23rd Psalm because when we read it, it makes us feel good. And it's like, oh, God loves me. And it's just like this warm hug. But if you read it and even understand the first verse and the order in which things show up, David says, hey, I decided to let the Lord be my leader. And because I allowed him to be my leader, I don't lack anything. For a lot of us, with our relationship with God, what we want is God, meet this need, fill this void, take care of this thing, answer this prayer, and when I lack nothing, I'll let you lead. But the order is actually important. We need to have God as our leader first, and then you'll lack nothing. If you don't let him lead first, listen, David's saying, hey, because I've let him be my shepherd, I lack nothing. And the rest of the psalm actually just explains what it looks like to have a leader. That's why it says he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I'll fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And listen, you can take that and you can cross stitch it and you can hang it up on your wall, and you can have like the water sound effects playing in the background, and it feels good. But if you really read it and apply it, think about what a leader does. Makes me. A leader is going to force you to do stuff you don't want to do. That's God, and his word is going to challenge you to live a way that you don't naturally want to live. But if you're actually being led, you're okay with it. He's going to lead me. I can't lead myself. I can't follow my emotions. He's going to make me do some things, but he's also going to lead me. I can't follow my emotions. I can't follow my best and brightest ideas. I need a leader, but then he guides me. There's a difference between a leader and a guide. A leader says, hey, that's where we're going. The guide says, this is how we're going to get there. God wants to do both. And how does he guide us? And where does he guide us? Through the darkest valleys. I like the version that says, through the valley of the shadow of death. And if you're really being led, you're gonna have to allow Jesus to lead you through some things that look dark, that feel painful, that are uncomfortable. And so often we end up in those environments like, where are you? He's like, just follow, I'm right here. I'm leading you. How could you, it's so done. I'm leading you, I'm guiding you. You gotta trust him if he's your leader. And so often we're like, God, I'll let you lead me, but not there. Not here, not through this. It's too, God, I don't want to go anywhere dark. I don't want to go anywhere where I can't see the future. I don't want to go anywhere where I can't see around the turn. He's going to make you. He's going to lead you. He's going to guide you. And then we read like his rod and his staff, they comfort me like a blanket. Do you know what the rod is? It's discipline. A leader will bring discipline. Jesus, I'm okay with you disciplining me in the areas where I already have disciplines. But I don't really want you to get into my money, and I don't really want you to get into my thought life, and I don't really want, no, he's gonna discipline you. He's gonna lead the patterns and the habits of your life so that they align with his word. His staff, it's the instruction of the Lord. A leader wants to make you, lead you, guide you, discipline you, teach you, and instruct you from his word. Why? Because he's anointed you and set you apart for a purpose. Lead you, make you, refresh you, guide you, discipline you, teach you, because you've been anointed for something more than where you are today. He says, all these people, no leader. And he starts to teach and preach. And Matthew tells us that a lot of people were getting healed. And Jesus, like, he's done, it's been a couple hours, and he gets the band up, and they come, and they're playing. And there's an altar call. And he's like, man, I got another word. Sit down. And the band sits down, and he starts preaching again, and just going and going. You're 10, 11 hours in, like he's going. And the disciples are starting to get concerned. They're in the front row. Hey, we know we're supposed to be his hype squad, but we're hungry. He's going a little long today. Yeah, I'd say. And I think from the front row, they probably started to give him some signals. I bet like Thaddeus or someone was like, psst. Psst. Hey, Chad. Listen, I only know the signs because Natasha gives them to me. So there's the tap of the watch. There's this one. I bet somebody, Matthew's probably given one of these. Wrap it up. Just wrap it up. You know, someone's doing this. Probably Peter. He's the most aggressive. And they're giving this. Now, here's the problem with those front row signs is that if you're really in the zone, they don't mean what the front row thinks they mean. So when I'm really going and Natasha does this, I'm like, I'll keep going. I got lots more to say. When somebody does this, I'm like, I'm good for time. I'm killing it out here. And so finally, it just gets to the point where like somebody has to do something. And I think Peter probably got nominated because they're like, hey, he doesn't really like you anyways. Go. And so they just walk up and like, hey, Jesus. And they say, it's a remote place. It's so late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than a half year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Now that's a wide shot. John gives us a little bit of a zoom in. John chapter 6, verse 5 says, when Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. So there is a problem. Jesus and the disciples are looking at a deficiency. They do not have enough on hand to meet the need in front of them. They cannot feed the crowd. Everybody's hungry. Uber Eats doesn't come out that far. It's late. You got 20,000 hungry people and a couple of immature disciples. There's a problem. But remember, deficiencies are miracle territory. And I don't know all of you, I can't list all of the deficiencies that are in this room, but I know there are deficiencies in the room because I know we serve a miracle working God, and the only space that he can do miracles is where we're deficient. So we are actually wired up with some deficiencies so God can meet our need. And so I don't know if the deficiency is not enough peace or not enough joy or not enough money or not enough time or not enough hope, or maybe it's just a feeling of I'm not enough, like I don't have the confidence or the ability or the background, I'm insecure, I'm frustrated, and I'm alone. But here's what I do know. It says in the text that Jesus already had in mind what to do. So whatever the deficiency is, the word of the Lord today is that wherever you have a need, trust this, Jesus already knows what to do. You serve a God who already knows. He sees the solution before they've even identified the problem. He already knew. God is never surprised by a situation. God is never caught off guard by a diagnosis. He's never shocked by what you're going through. He's never like, man, I didn't expect this to happen. I hope somebody has some good ideas here. No. He already knew what to do. And when he asks the question, where should we buy bread? He doesn't do it for his sake. He does it for the sake of the disciples. Why? Because when you're willing to recognize where you're deficient, it'll illuminate where you've been dependent. And Jesus is trying to illuminate that the disciples have not been dependent on him, but they've been dependent on their own natural resource. He had to ask. He's making a point. You don't have enough to meet this need. Somebody in the room needs to hear that. That thing you've been struggling with, you actually don't have enough to overcome it. You don't. You don't have enough to meet that need. And it's not until you realize you don't have enough that you reveal where it was you were looking in the first place. So Jesus doesn't even ask Philip, hey man, how are we going to buy bread? That's not the word he uses. He says where. Jesus knows Phil is the guy who always shows up at dinner without his wallet. Oh shoot, guys. I'm sorry, could somebody get me on this one? Could you spot me? Jesus knows that. Jesus is prepared to pick up the tab. He's not concerned with how they're going to pay for it. He's going to pay for it. He's just saying, do you want McDonald's or do you want the keg? He's asking for options. Phil, where should we go for dinner? But because of his dependency filter, his immediate reaction is, we don't have enough. That wasn't the question, Phil. But the answer reveals where he's been dependent. Philip is calculating. He's like, yeah, but I lack here and we lack there. And he's trying to make a decision based on the easy, obvious external factors in front of him. Most of the needs that you have are not going to be met by the easy, obvious external things that you have within arm's reach. They're going to be met by the supernatural God who lives on the inside of you. And so the question is, when you have a deficiency, where's your default? Right. What do you swing to? This is what I need to meet the need. I'm deficient. I don't have the job I want. I don't have the schedule I want. I don't have the knowledge I want. I don't have the experience I need. I don't have the home life. I don't have the talent. I didn't have the upbringing. I didn't have the parents. I don't have a spouse yet. Who cares? Live with purpose anyways. It's easier. I don't have the confidence. If I just had, listen, Jesus does not care about what Philip doesn't have. Jesus wants Philip to see who he does have. Philip wasn't enough. The part of the issue and the challenge for us is that we have a world that is saying over and over and over again, you're enough. You're awesome. Everything you need is within you. You're not. And neither am I. I'm broken and flawed and insecure and incomplete, and I am not enough. And it is exhausting trying to meet needs when you don't have enough. Philip was missing Jesus right there. John chapter 6 goes on to say, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? I want you to see the difference between Phil and Drew. Philip is making a list of what he doesn't have. I think Andrew's kind of listening. He's like, when is he going to be done? And he walks over. Shut up, Phil. Jesus, here's what we do have. It's different. Jesus, I found this kid with a lunchbox. It's not much, but it's something. We got 5 loaves and 2 fish. You know what I think one of the most faith-filled statements in the Bible is right here. But how far will they go among so many? I used to read that like it was a negative. Like, Jesus, we got 5 loaves and 2 fish, but how far are they going to go? But what if the tone, I can't wait to find out because we can't get all of the tone and the inflection from Scripture. But what if it was like, Jesus, we got 5 loaves and 2 fish, but how far are they going to go? What can happen with this little bit? Jesus, if I bring it to you and see what it can do in your hands, and all of a sudden deficiency leads to a discovery of what I do have. Now, he doesn't get it perfect, but he shows up and I think has a little bit of faith saying, Jesus, I know this isn't enough, but I wonder what can happen if we bring it to you. I wonder if that was the posture of our lives. Jesus, I'm not enough, but here's what I do have. Jesus, this is the faith I can muster right now in this situation. Here's all the confidence I've got. Jesus, what can you do with the little bit that I have to offer? Listen, you might not have enough. I can tell you for sure you are not enough, but if you bring what you do have to Jesus, Jesus plus whatever you'll offer him is enough for every situation you're ever gonna face. Something plus the Savior. Come on, that's all that you need in your home. That's all you need in your business. That's all Rose Church needs to see something miraculous happen in the region. It's Jesus plus whatever you'll bring. Now, there are a lot of different miracles taking place. I just want to stop and shout out the kid's mom. That's the miracle, like behind the miracle, that on that particular day, she made him lunch. Moms, you're like, oh, thank God, finally some credit. Because no kid ever says thank you for lunch. I did not know when we were getting ready to start sending our kids to school that the big stressor in school was not going to be the subjects or the teachers. It was going to be the competition and the envy and the jealousy and the disparity between the lunch my children brought and the lunches they saw beside them. And consistently, day after day, how was your day? The first thing out of their mouths was like, well, guess what so-and-so had for lunch? Like, I had no idea this is going to be the issue. I had no idea. Now, in fairness, we have a pretty tight lunch rotation. We got 4 kids, so we just keep it simple. Mondays are ham wraps. Tuesdays are noodles. Wednesdays are hot dogs. And Thursdays are a ham noodle hot dog wrap. It's just whatever we got left gets thrown in. And so I get it, but I'm tired of hearing about the kid who had a cheese string. I don't care. It's just tension. But this kid's mom got up and did what she did every single day without anybody thanking her, without anybody asking her to do it. It was this small moment. It was this regular, everyday faithfulness in the mundane. I don't doubt that she's up while it's still dark, packing a lunch, and it's quiet. There's nobody applauding her and saying, "Great lunch today, Mom." But if mom hadn't gotten up and mom hadn't been faithful and consistent and mom hadn't made the lunch, this miracle never happens. And instead of chasing the miracle, what if we just committed to being faithful in the mundane moments? What if we were just okay? Say, listen, I'm gonna show up and serve again because this might be the time when revival breaks out at Rose, and I wanna make sure that I'm rostered on that Sunday. I wanna be there opening the door when somebody gets saved. I'm gonna do the simple thing. I'm gonna hold a baby again in Rose Church Kids, say, because I'm giving an opportunity for a parent to sit in a service and their life will be changed and transformed. And who knows, maybe this little kid that I'm holding is gonna be a campus pastor at our church someday, gonna step up into leadership. What if you just did the faithful, simple, over and over? You don't need a thank you. That's pride. If your motivation is praise, your motivation is pride. I'm not saying it's bad to be thanked. I think it's good. We should encourage one another as long as it's called today. But if that's why you're doing it, you'll never be satisfied. But if we would just do man, every time you give, you might not be able to give as much as you'd like to give someday, but give in obedience today your 10% and a little bit above and beyond, and just trust. In my hands, it's a limited resource, but in his hands, it could reach thousands of people. And I'm just gonna be faithful in the simple, the mundane. Good churches are not built on the sensational moments. They're built on the steady, committed, sacrificial people who say, we're gonna come back day after day, week after week, year after year. I'll lead another group, I'll sing another song, I'll run sound again. And before you know it, one day you're like, how did we get here? One lunch at a time. Shout out to the mom. Andrew says, man, how far is this gonna go? And the disciples are about to learn some new math. Because see, I think math is, I know they're trying to change math, but I think math is basically the same in Calgary as it is in Winnipeg, and 5 + 2 = 7. And for the disciples, they thought like 5 + 2 = 1 lunch. But what they're about to see is that in Jesus' hands, 5 + 2 = 20,000 lunches with leftovers. It's new math. And a few years ago when everybody had to do school at home, I had to get a little more involved in the academic side of my children's lives. So I remember helping with some math. It was really frustrating to me because I kind of thought I was good at math. And then I'm helping, and math has changed so much that it was a point of pain. Remember one day, it was something simple. It was like, Dad, what's 21 divided by 7? Like, who raised you? Like, it's 3, obviously. And he's like, no, I know the answer's 3, Dad, but I got this whole piece of 8.5 by 11. I got to show my work. Like, what do you mean you got to show your work? The work is 3, buddy. It's 3. That's the work. I just did it. It's 3. He's like, no, you got to like show all the steps. Like, how do you get from 21 to 3? I'm like, it's 1 step, man. You just get there. He's like, no, Dad, I got to unpack it. There's layers to this. And I remember having to figure out, I just gave up, and I don't even, he might have dropped out. I don't even know. He's 12. I think he's doing fine. But it was just different, and there's something about showing the work. And I think it's really easy at times for Christians to be like, what's the answer for your anxiety? And what's the answer for your depression? And what's the answer for the deficiency? Oh, it's Jesus. But it helps every once in a while to be shown the work. Okay, well, how do I get from feeling like I'm not enough? How do we get from being here as Rose Church and knowing God's got so much in our future, but also knowing it, we might not feel like we have enough money, we might not feel like we have enough team, we're limited to resource. How do we get from here to 20,000? Well, I got 5 minutes and 30 seconds left. Everything else has been introduction. I got a 5-point sermon. Are you ready? You think I'm kidding? Well, we're gonna be fast. Get ready, okay. Can I just show you the math really quick? How do we get from I'm not enough to I am standing and serving and filled with the God of more than enough? The simple answer is 3. The simple answer is Jesus, but I want to unpack it just a little bit, the new math. Okay, I'm gonna show you the work. Verse 39 of Mark chapter 6, then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. They sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. The first thing, 5 points, here we go. Number 1, you need the right people. He said, people get in a group. Tells them all to get in a group. You need the right people. You need the right community. When Pastor Mark's talking about groups starting again this fall, man, I hope something is like coming alive. Yes! I need to be around the right people. Rose Church is full of the right people. And in fact, the answer for some of the needs you carried into the room might be sitting in your row. You just got to have some convos and get connected to the right people. There are people, don't just show up and slip out. Get involved, get connected, come early, shake off the introvert and have some awkward conversations. Get around the right people. You are as connected as you choose to be. Don't blame the church if you feel lonely. You're as connected as you choose to be. You need to get around some people. There are people here who will encourage you, strengthen you, and hold you accountable. So number 1, you need the people. Number 2, it says sit down on green grass. You need the place. You need to be in the right environment. Don't spend all of your time investing in dead environments. Get in the right, healthy, growing, nourishing, encouraging environment. So often we get prayer cards in like you guys do. I'm just having trouble finding the right people. I'm having trouble finding, some quality friends. And it's like, well, where are you looking? You will always find the wrong people if you look in the wrong place. And listen, I even understand that some of you will go to work tomorrow in a dead place. That's fine. Let your relationships, though, be deeply rooted here in green grass, and watch what happens in the dead places you spend Monday to Saturday. It'll start getting green because you're anchored in good relationships. You got to have the right people. You got to be in the right place. The band can come up and do whatever you're going to do. It's going to be great. The right people, the right place. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up into heaven, they gave thanks and broke the loaves. The third thing we got to do is have the right posture. Got to be around the right people. I'm going to find them in the right place, but I got to have the right posture, which is, God, everything I have belongs to you. I'm going to bring it to you. Here's my lunch, Jesus. I want you to take the whole thing. I want you to take my whole life. I'm not going to serve you on Sunday and serve me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's not, listen, this is not, God, you can have my business, but I'll keep my thought life. This is not, God, you can have my family, but I'll keep my money. No, it's, God, you have everything. It's not, God, you can have my calendar, but I'll keep my internet browser history to myself. It's, God, you can have everything. The right posture is everything gets brought to Jesus. There are a lot of Christian hoarders. You might have a clean house, but a messy heart. Everything goes to Jesus. You want to step into the more than enough, you got to give everything to Jesus because he can bless what's not enough. What do you have? Just start bringing it every day. And then it says then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. People, place, posture. The fourth thing is purpose. He gave to his disciples to distribute, to serve the needs. That's where listen, the disciples were hungry too. 5 loaves and 2 fish is not enough to feed 12 grown men. And it wasn't until they began to serve that they were also satisfied. It wasn't until they served and were distributing and meeting the needs of others that they also had more than they needed. We are not here for ourselves. We are here to distribute the gospel of Jesus to the people in the neighborhood, to the school 600 meters away, to the city of Winnipeg. There's an anointing on Rose Church, I believe, not just for the city of Winnipeg, but for the almost 5 million people that live in this province. So it's time to get on a team. And God took these 12 from being hungry and in need to being full and having met the needs of 20,000 other people as it was distributed. Get on a team. If you're here today and you have not yet served at Rose Church, I promise you, you are missing out on the most rewarding part of being in a church community. And not only will it bless others and have eternal impact, you will get what you need. But I don't know, it feels like I'm giving something away. No. God's economy works different. When you distribute, you receive. It's crazy. People, place, posture, purpose. Last one, repeat. I'm sorry it doesn't start with a P. I apologize. People, place, posture, purpose. How do I know they kept coming back? Well, I know because it only ever says that Jesus divided the 2 fish. There was no moment when he said, and there's a buffet spread, and the 20,000 come up and they're just helping themselves. No. He only ever had 2 fish, which means that they had to come to him for what they needed and took what they needed in the moment and go distribute it to fulfill their purpose, and then go back to him for what they needed in the next moment, and take it to fulfill their purpose. People, place, posture, purpose, repeat. God designs it this way, so we have to keep coming back to him. So it's not, Sunday is not a buffet. Sunday is part of what nourishes you, but then you got to come back to him on Monday before the kids get up. Say, God, I need a little bit of you, because you're going to distribute. And then, hey, listen, you might need to go back to him again before the business meeting, because it's repeat. I need a little bit for this meeting. And what you need for Tuesday is not what you got on Monday. So it's people, place, posture, purpose, and repeat. And we continue to go back to Jesus and back to Jesus and back to Jesus. And a lot of us get depleted in our faith because we stop repeating. Oh, I'm in the right place with the right people. I got the right posture. I'm trying to serve, but you stopped going back to Jesus. Listen, I'm telling you, if you keep going back, you will be satisfied. You're stepping into miracle territory. You might not be enough today, but he is. Jesus is still hope and healer. He's still defender. He's still your rescue and your refreshing. He's still your shield. He's still your triumph. He's still your comfort. He's still your song. He's still your story, and he is more than enough. Everything you need is in that one place.